Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Negotiation. And on today's show, our guest may just be the longest tenured China hand we've ever had on the show. Scott Silverman, who is currently the director of integrated marketing at the Context Collective, dramatically shifted gears from morning drive radio and sketch comedy to joining Ogilvy in the 90s to then be sent to Bejing with the instructions, fix China, referring to the IBM account they managed at the time. Scott has been working in and around China ever since. We talk about launching IBM's e-business and rejecting the oft-used wall test when it came to creating creative in Asia. We talk about the importance of localizing imagery or copy for each local market and the difference in measuring impact in the 2000s versus 5 years ago to gauge what was working and what wasn't. Scott also takes us on a trip down memory lane around the impact mobile had on the marketing agency world in markets like Japan and China and the changes it predicated in digital media, as well as the changes it brought in the consumers the brands were targeting and trying to catch up with the expectation of immediacy. Enjoy.
Make something now, and we'll test it. If it doesn't work, we'll throw it out. We'll try something again. And that's the mentality that if you're coming into the China market, or if you're in the China market and struggling, you need to be patient, you need to invest, and you need to realize that as soon as you say go, you better be ready to go. And you better be ready to make some mistakes. You better be ready to fail, because the only way you're going to succeed is by failing many, many times. That's how you make it in China. And the speed to fail is the speed to success.
Home to over 4 billion people, the Asia-Pacific region boasts one of the most powerful consumer markets on the planet. Not only is it home to half the world's under 30 population, but it's also home to more than half the world's internet users. It's a market no globally minded brand should ignore, but entering markets like China is no easy task. Just ask the likes of Microsoft, Google, Uber, and Facebook. Times are changing, and with the right partners, doors are slowly opening as more and more companies find success expanding into the markets of the Middle Kingdom. I myself spent 8 years in China, mostly as a venture capitalist, helping early-stage tech companies enter the Asia-Pacific market successfully. This show is dedicated to uncovering and examining successful China entry and growth strategies by interviewing the people behind those success stories. My name is Todd Embley, and welcome to The Negotiation, brought to you by WPIC Marketing and Technologies.
Scott, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on today.
Hey, Todd, thanks very much. Pleasure.
Okay, this is going to be fun. I can already tell from the beginning. And, you know, you have some, I think you may actually be the most tenured guest with regards to China that we've ever had, because you go back way into like mid 90s, right? And, you know, this is back to the time you were saying, I think it may have been Ogilvy, I might be wrong, but they were like, okay, listen, Tim, we need you to tool time up and go to, go to Asia, maybe go to China, fix China for us. Walk us through a little bit about how you ended up in China and, you know, kind of walk us through from then till now.
Okay, first, my background is I've had a lot of twists and turns, spanning door-to-door sales, rejection, morning drive radio, sketch comedy, before I got a real job at 34 years old with Ogilvy, LA. And they stuck me in the Microsoft business. I had no idea I had absolutely, all I could do was turn on the radio. That was my extent of understanding technology. And then about 4 years later, Ogilvy had to fire Microsoft because we got the IBM business. And I was going to leave, and they said, hey, you want to go to Japan? I went, Japan? I got 3 kids. And okay, I'll go. He goes, you want to see Japan? I go, no, I've seen it on TV. You know, they got the big monsters and everything. The kids are going to love it. So we all moved to Japan. 6 months later, they said, listen, we need you to go fix China. I said, how long is this going to be? They said, it's going to just be like 4 months. 4 years later, I was still fixing China. It was a pretty wild ride. Launched e-business, had to fight a lot with my people and the IBM corporate people about they wanted to do the wall test where they wanted to just insert all the global advertising in China with e-business. And we all said, it's not going to work. Anyway, I can go into the specifics later, but I'm back in the United States after 18 glorious years in Asia, 12 of which in China, all of which in China in beautiful Bejing.
You spent all the time living in Bejing.
All my China days have been in Bejing. Yeah, I had 4 different tours of duty in Bejing because I was also living in Hong Kong when I worked in a Motorola business, and I lived in Singapore as well. But Beijing always, it always pulled me back.
You were sent to fix China. Okay. So what were you met with? What was the understanding? What was the landscape? How did you accomplish a goal? If yes, how? If not, why?
I did. My goal was very simple. It was IBM. That was the largest client, not only in China, but all across Asia. And because of IBM, the culture that Ogilvy developed over the next 15 years was really funded by their partnership with IBM. So it was absolutely imperative that these clients that hated us, they needed to love us. And one of the things that irritated them is they didn't like creative shoved down their throats, especially creative that they felt wouldn't resonate with the customers in China. And I totally agreed with them. So I got on board with them right away, much to the dismay of, my team in New York and the IBM client saying, what the hell are you doing? What do you mean you're agreeing with them? I said, well, the e-business campaign, you want to launch it here. And there's a lot of wordplay. And besides, it's all text driven. There needs to be a way to make e-business resonate with the folks that you want it to resonate with. They said, okay, come up with an idea. So what we did is I had a great team. We used iconography to communicate e-business, first in recognizing what e-business was. So we just took a string of firecrackers, red firecrackers, and the business, we used a dragon. So it was a dragon and the firecrackers that we used to communicate and then get into the local parlance what e-business was, but that still wasn't enough. In China at that time, digital was nascent. And so we needed to get TV. Well, we didn't have any money for TV. All the money was going to other countries. So the guys in Armonk said, just figure it out. So my guys, again, they came up with a brilliant plan. They said, well, why don't we do PSAs? And why don't we create stories showing how technology and e-business will help China get up to the world stage and show like 4 or 5 vignettes and just don't put IBM in it. So we said, okay, let's write some up and gave it to the media department and they presented it to the censors and they approved it. So we ran these vignettes for a couple of months, didn't have to pay a cent. And what it did was the pre and post awareness of e-business and IBM went from nothing to like 60% unaided awareness when they saw e-business. Even though everybody was using e-business, including a lot of the government organizations, they all associated with IBM. So I thought that was a really big win. Taking something and also convincing the folks, the Americans, that the wall test doesn't work in China and that let us do our own thing. Let us do local creative. Let us listen to the client and listen to the customers. And it was hugely successful. And I fixed China until something else came along.
Localization is and has been really the key to a lot of things. It's been part of how China has become so adaptive with innovation, but it's also how companies have been able to even find a modicum of success in that market. And you talked about even you fixed it until it wasn't. And so I'm wondering if you can talk and use maybe some anecdotes from your work, whether it's with Motorola or Coca-Cola, but talking about how the localization is so important. Why? What is already there? What's the ingredients in the soup that are already there that predicate the need for localization? And then what can localization look like towards a success?
Well, the things in the soup are, what's the product and what do you want the takeaway to be when your audience views whatever, whether it's a print ad or whether it's a website or whether it's TV commercials, like what is the takeaway? What is the perception after they see it, before you see it? It's a general agency speak. So what's in the soup is you got a product and you got key benefits, and these are sacrosanct. So you have the ThinkPad, and there's a ThinkPad. They're not going to change the ThinkPad. It's beautiful. It's black. It looks great. Little red, the red eraser in the middle. I love it. Here are the benefits: is what ThinkPad has: a processor and best keyboard in the world. Still does. Blah blah blah. But the way it resonates doesn't mean taking exactly what they have in the United States and sticking a Chinese person behind the ThinkPad and using the same copy and just translating it. There needs to be, perhaps the benefits need to be calibrated differently. Perhaps the tone and the manner need to be tweaked a little bit. And that's something where we let the local markets, opt in and say, this is what we need. Now, sometimes there was some problems. Like we had a client in Taiwan. They like war themes. So we had IBM came up with this server, and the proposition was no matter what your customers, no matter what your channel partners throw at you, you'll be able to handle it with the IBM System 400s, whatever. And so they had a guy in camouflage with a heart, with a military uniform in front of the server, and they said, "This is good. This, our channel people will like us." Like, you can't do that. Why? You asked us to come up with something. Work in Taiwan. Well, the war theme's not really. And we went back and forth, and I was protecting him. I said, "You cannot show this to Armonk. They will flip out." And finally we modified it. It was a tough guy without a war uniform, without camouflage, and without a gun. But it still was using someone who was a little solemn, businesslike, like an offensive lineman in football saying, "Hey, whatever you throw at me, I'm going to be able to block." And that was that. So that's where I said, I fixed it until I didn't. It's like, once you empower the local markets, you then need to make sure they don't go, off the reservation. Because if that happened in Japan, it happened in Taiwan, it happened in, Thailand, where we really had to limit how localized the ad was, so it didn't bastardize the IBM brand.
You've been responsible for certain markets, both inside PRC and outside PRC. And if I'm not mistaken, you were doing Bejing and Hong Kong type work, focus work at the same time. So how do you tend to those fields and those markets similarly but differently?
It's like a comedian. You got to know your audience. If you're in front of an audience of drunk people in Oklahoma, your act's going to be different than if you're in an audience of college professors in Berkeley. So the same thing in our business is, I was not only Hong Kong, but every single market in Asia. The way we approached it was we really focused on what will resonate with the people that we are targeting. And if it's there's no politicizing. I didn't work on any political accounts. I didn't work on any NGOs. I worked on mostly B2B, mostly high tech, with a little pharmaceutical thrown in. So if I'm talking to Hong Kong, my sensibilities for what we have in the Hong Kong market are quite similar to what we have in Shanghai, which is, it's very business oriented. Shanghai and Hong Kong, they don't like a lot of visual metaphors. They just want, what do you got? How much does it cost? And why should we care? So it's kind of like the what, the so what, and the now what. Just stick with it. Germany's the same way. Mm-hmm. That's it. If you're dealing with Hong Kong, if you're dealing with Taiwan and Beijing, you could be a little bit more conceptual. They like kind of historical imagery. They enjoy it. It's they like the emotion of it. So you play to your audience. So that's what we did. And we had some really great clients. And they understood that even in the Asia market, well, there's no such thing as Asia. It's like each, and it's actually in China, we tried to even get down to provincial cities. Even more so when I worked on the automotive business. in the provincial cities, what you say in Chengdu, how you deliver it is going to be different than how you deliver it in Beijing. But if we just lift it up a little bit, if you really connected with consumer insights in the market, if you really understand what the objective is, if you're totally connected with what sales and marketing are going after, then you're able to deliver work that works.
Were you able to measure those efforts into going down to a provincial city level?
Oh God.
And I'm
yes.
just wondering, like, so you can effectively say that the ROI was there for for putting in the work.
Yeah. Now, I'm giving you a soft yes, because it really works better if it's not pre and post, where you're trying to do the aided and the unaided types of research. It really works if it's a consumer-based, fast-moving consumer good, so you could see right off, what's leaving the shelf. So a direct-to-customer type of measurement is the best. Direct response is the best. So in the cases where we had direct response campaigns, yes. If we had direct response and direct marketing, we were able to see what's working in the provinces. We did the ABC tests, and a lot of times different provinces and different cities, provincial city, I should say, would be getting work that was just a little different. Maybe the call to action was a little different. Maybe the bullet points were, they were in a different order. We would play with it. It was like there was no, okay, we're done. Let's go eat. It's like we had to be nannies to our work every single day, every moment. We had to make sure what we delivered in the marketplace was working, because that's what the client expected.
As we start looking towards talking about the evolution and the change of the entire industry, I'm curious how you were able to measure. And speaking of measuring, how did you measure, let's say in the 2000s versus how one would measure 5 years ago?
It was very basic in the 2000s. We did have some calls to action which were online. We did there was a lot of direct mail. And it was very effective in a business to business sense, and it was very easy. If people responded. Now, as soon as we went to EDMs, electronic mail, it was much easier, because then we could do the click throughs, time on the site, and it would be much more clarity in seeing what worked in real time. But we didn't have that. So we paid attention to the research that we were able to able to deliver with the tools that we had at the time. So there was pre and post. There was some brand tracking we were doing, though a lot of the brand and we were lucky in China, because we were one of the top 7 markets in the world. Other markets, as I mentioned, the Thailands, the Taiwans, and even the Koreas, it was harder for them to measure, but being in the top 7 markets in the world, we were able to see what was working, and being able to shift perception when perception was able to be shifted. But now it's easy as pie. Now everything is just almost 100% of what I do right now is digital. I can't remember the last time I did something that was on film or even video that was not meant for YouTube. One, budgets are a lot less. And two, people are cutting back, and they're looking for return on investment and maximizing every, if I give you $1, I want to earn $2. So now it's much easier, from the inbound, the outbound, from understanding SEO, what's coming in the website, calibrating customer journeys, which also we didn't have customer journeys back then. Now we have customer journeys. So we're able to, based on the way you enter the site and go through the site, we're able to understand how to get back to you. So it's not a non sequitur. Right. And measuring everything. So it was a lot harder then, but we did the best we could.
You mentioned, alluded to in evolving customer, and I do want to get to that, but I do want to quickly ask you about the tsunami-like takeover of mobile. And really what that did was allowed for, I would guesstimate like 500 million people to be able to access the internet. You know, I mean, it wasn't just so much mobile as the impact was just how many more people are on digital. And can you just talk about what you saw over your time of the impact that had?
Oh, it was in Japan as well. I was in Japan first, and we set up Ogilvy, Mobile Ogilvy, with a fellow by the name of Dr. John Ricketts, who has a company now called Significant Systems, which I think is the best consumer insight outfit out there, period. But most Japanese, their first foray into the internet was on mobile. Just because the PCs they were using, they were just so rigid and unscalable. Nobody even wanted to go on. And so all of a sudden you went from 0 to, 100 million people online. And same thing happened in China. It wasn't as drastic because people in China were getting on the internet via, their PCs and laptops. But it was a thrill. Because we had to change the way we were communicating, and that kept us honest. So there had to be smaller footprint types of creative that would be able to be digested by someone on a small on the third screen, as they called it back then. Whether they were in a bus or whether they were walking, and it just had it had to be measured. I worked mostly with mobile that would have a call to action that we'd be able to see, based on the number of mobile devices that we hit, what percentage were clicking on it and what percentage were clicking through. But it was a tsunami, and it changed the way. It scared a lot of agency people that start everything with, okay, so let's have a film and, big format, and let's have an event. Because no, we need to go mobile native. We need to go little screen to big screen to experiential. And a lot of creatives said, oh my God. And that the fortunate thing is this is what brought creative and media together. It forced a relationship that before was a little tenuous. It used to be media would be the last guys allowed to present in the room, and they got 10 minutes after a dog and pony show of an hour and a half. Now, media was actually much further up the ladder, because before the work was presented, they needed to justify what the touch points were going to be, and then how the work they were about to see would deliver to these touch points in a very efficient manner. So that's what happened. I was fortunate because I was running the Motorola business right when this tsunami really hit. They said, okay, you're done with IBM, go to Motorola. And we wanted, and the first thing we did is there was a campaign from the US, and it was the Moto campaign. Hello, Moto.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that was supposed to be a wild posting. The corporate campaign was supposed to be intelligence everywhere, showing the entire Motorola as making the invisible visible and how things talking to things. But who owned 85% of the budget of Motorola? Handsets. And the handset people went, wait. We don't want all our money going to semiconductors. No, we need to sell phones. So they said, we want Moto to be the brand campaign. And this was... We had to cancel a Super Bowl commercial, which was going to be intelligence everywhere, and in 1 month come up with a brand campaign for Moto. So what does that mean in China? Moto in Taiwan, motorcycle. And it did in Bejing too.
Right.
Motorola in Hong Kong meant something like you're about to be fired or something like that. So and Nokia was completely eating Motorola's lunch. So what we did is we needed to teach people to stop using the word Motorola and use Moto. So we did a TV commercial which had quick cuts of different people in Bejing, subway, young people, old people, saying Moto, 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 Moto. And it's like, wow, that's silly. But what it did is it got people recognizing the Moto was Motorola. It made it hip. It made it cool. And it helped really start to change people's perspective of Motorola as being a very stodgy mobile phone, as opposed to Nokia, which was cooler, into something that they wanted to use, and something that became actually a fashion statement. So all this was happening at the same time, and we were fixing a car while it was still moving mode, because we had months to change something we've been working on for 3 months into something that was just supposed to be a wall posting in New York City and a couple of other markets.
It's not just that people get on the internet. It's people change. And when your end game is to help people reach people, your end game is to help companies reach people, and those people are changing. The target is moving. And now everybody's on mobile and everybody's on internet, and the target is moving incredibly fast. Can you talk about, we talked about the evolution of internet and the impact of digital when the phones came out and allowed so many people to suddenly be on the internet. How did consumers change? How did tastes and preferences change?
Well, it was the immediacy that people were loving. And we were, the QR code, of course, which is still kind of, Americans aren't really embracing it, but the being able to deliver a QR code on a mobile phone that someone could immediately go and transact with it, that was huge. And for larger B2B companies, they were always saying, well, that's more of a consumer thing, but really it wasn't. It was giving people real time, just in time information. And whether you're working with a company like Nestle, who wanted to calibrate when people were leaving work, get them thinking about what they're going to be going to the store to buy, and let's send messages to the people that we knew that were in the target audience, planting in their heads, this is what you want to go to the store to buy. This is a great product. Why don't you pick this up? It'll be easy. You're working hard. So the expectations of completely shifted into turbo gear. People weren't as patient anymore. And the expectations were, we don't want to wait. It used to be, with a dial-up modem, you hear 28.7, and you didn't get pissed off.
That just took me back.
You remember that? And then
I do. The P133, I think I had.
Yeah. Oh, it was horrible. And then, but the same thing, and how slow that. You remember, you had 2G, you had 2.5G, then you had 3G, then you had the SDMA thing, and all. But the whole time, the faster things were delivered to people, the higher their expectations were. So for us, it was really coming up with very succinct messages and not really laborious long copy for people that we knew we'd have to be hitting while they were on the move. So it changed a lot of the way. And this is, again, media. This is when they blossom. The mobile environment and digital environment is really what turned media into, the 800-pound gorilla from
Sounds
being,
like you could be talking about Star Wars.
It's kind of like that.
Ever tried to watch the old ones from the 70s?
I know. I just did.
Chewing my nails off.
It was like, all right already. No, but it was the same thing. So, it was like this beast. It was this beast that the faster you fed the beast, the more they wanted even faster, and they would get pissed off. That how social media in China, you had these people, they were eviscerating. They were eviscerating Motorola and Nokia, and we're saying, no, it's the infrastructure. Why don't you eviscerate China Mobile? They're the ones that are slow, not us. But no, they have a phone in their hand. They're pissed off at that phone. And, of course, you don't want to, the manufacturers don't want to start bagging on, China Moble by saying
some of our audience might have to Google who those companies were.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm dating myself. But the point is that what mobile did is completely changed the way we communicate, how people digest information. The budget started to shift drastically from 80% awareness advertising, lots of TV, lots of print. So we want more digital, we want mobile, and we want it now. We want to measure everything. It's very important, and you need to do it now. And that's kind of that was the whole playing field was completely different.
Did outdoor die? Did TV die?
No,
Magazine die?
No. Now you have smart outdoor. So no, I love outdoor, and outdoor is actually flourishing because of digital. TV, no way did TV die. You still have a huge audience, but it's not the only show in town. It's not like, in the late 90s, you turn on, one of the TV stations and you'd have 10 minutes of commercials, daisy chained together, just hitting you. There's P&G, there's Unilever, bam, 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 bam. And it was all about carpet bombing, more carpet bombing. All of a sudden, people didn't want that.
Nowadays, it's how can I pay somebody something to get rid of these damn commercials?
Exactly. It's like, you can. It's like the taxi cabs that have the blaring, obnoxious screens in the taxi cabs. You want to just shut up. I said, I will pay you 20 RMB to shut this off. I don't want to hear it anymore. And the same thing in an airport in the United States. I don't want to hear Fox or CNN anymore. Can I just have peace and quiet?
How do you prepare a company for what they're going to be faced with, and what does that speed look like? How does it change operations? How does it change knowing what you know when you're pitching? How does it change your pitch? How does it change the deliverables that you've got on your slides and when they're going to be delivered and how much they're going to cost? And how does it change the whole thing?
Yeah, if I'm talking to an American company that wants to go to China, I say, okay, so we're going to talk about speed. The first speed is you need to be patient. It's not going to be like instant oatmeal.
The first speed is slow.
The first speed is slow, really slow. And you need to pump some money in here, and it's not going to be instant. Then the next speed is turbocharged, and it's every day it's 2x what it was the day before. And that the expectations are if you're advertising a product, it better be available. And they better be able to get it now. And by the way, it's like you can't ruminate over, creative with focus groups and coming up with exactly the right thing. Just get the stuff out there. Just do live tests. See what works. Take some chances, because that's how Chinese companies operate. They're very tactical. They don't ruminate and think about, so what if we do this? And what if we change that? And it's like, no, make something now. And we'll test it. If it doesn't work, we'll throw it out. We'll try something again. And that's the mentality that if you're coming into the China market, or if you're in the China market and struggling, you need to be patient, you need to invest, and you need to realize that as soon as you say go, you better be ready to go. And you better be ready to make some mistakes. You better be ready to fail, because the only way you're going to succeed is by failing many, many times. That's how you make it in China. And the speed to fail is the speed to success.
I've described China as, in a country that's exponential, nothing is linear.
Right. So
you can't expect it to be so.
You can't. No, that takes me, the clients used to be very literal. They would have, okay, so here's a day in a life. So they'd have they go to the media department. We want you to do a day in a life of our typical customer, of when he wakes up in the morning or she wakes up in the morning until the end of the day. And we want to show how our advertising and messages will be able to influence them, and what will they do. So in the old days, it was very linear. I saw these billboards, and I saw this print ad, and then I see this TV commercial, and maybe I get something on my phone. But it's not linear. It's not literal. It's lateral. It's like, I don't know, a day in a life, who are you talking about? You think there's just one person? You think everybody does the same thing? No. You think about what you do versus your neighbor. So you got to stop thinking like that. What you have to do is you need to think of it as, here's what we need to do. Here's who we're going after. We have lots of seeds to sow. Let's throw them out there and see what works. And the more points of contact that you have with someone that's relevant, because it's not content is king, it's context is king. So the more content that you put out there that's contextually relevant at the right time, that's what you need to go for. And that's not linear. That is not literal. It's lateral.
Let's talk about that. I want you to go in on that. That's your key. And it's interesting. Tell me about why, after all these years, as a young 29 man that you are, after all these years, why is everything come down to context for you? How did you realize it? Why is it that way? What does it mean?
Because brands aren't in charge anymore. The customers are steering everything. If you are going to be carpet bombing and you're going to be remarketing, I know there's a lot of people listening to this that make a lot of money off remarketing, and I'm not saying it's not successful, but it's not the panacea. There needs to be a way for you to be able to get content-rich messages that are not blaring your product or hyping your product, but talking about situations that make your product the answer to their woes, and that people will click on it and it's contextually relevant to them, and it will take them to some place which will then say, this is what we have for you. We understand your pain. Answer a couple of questions and we'll give you exactly what you need. And that's what people are used to now. They don't want to be going through 200-page websites, clicking through all the tab. No. They have the reason and that's why I love SEO. SEO is all about context. SEO is the answer to the test. Someone is putting in that Google box something that's not, guess what? It's very rarely a product name unless, they're talking about proximity marketing. But right now I'm not. They're putting in usually a problem, an issue, a challenge, a headache, and they're hoping to God that on that Google page 1, there's something they can click on that's going to take them to Shangri-La. That will give them the answer they need so they can run up to the boss, say, this is what you need, let's buy it, and then go eat lunch. And that's all context. If they have to, if we're depending on people to sit through a 25-minute infomercial, or sit through, 15 30-second ads, daisy chained, hoping that something's going to resonate with them, like throwing spaghetti on a wall, that's not happening anymore. That's done. It's finished.
The last question before we move towards the end here is, given all the advice that you've given and handed out here today, if you could pick one, I think you alluded to it being your top draft pick. What is your best piece of advice in the moment right now for foreign companies looking to be successful entering China?
All right. You're not the smartest guy in the room anymore. So if you're the smartest guy in the room in Indianapolis or New York or Dallas, Texas, you are no longer the smartest guy in the room. You get in the room in this other market and you listen. That's all you do. If someone asks you something, if you have something intelligent and relevant to say, by God, say it. But it used to be where the expats would come in and it was all like the professors coming to town. Oh, this is how we did it in the United States. And this is how we launched it. And you don't really know about brands. We're going to teach you about brands. And they'd all be taking notes. Some of them would be sleeping, of course. They'd say concentrating, but I knew they were sleeping. But the lecture would all be one way. This is what we think, and this is how we can help you. It's completely reversed now. Now they're going to tell you what they need, and that you will then calibrate the best way to deliver to their needs. So at the end, it's a matter of, we delivered on the objectives. We delivered on what the return on investment is. We took a look at a lot of the tactics and we were able to wrap it into a strategy. So it wasn't only tactical. It wasn't a bunch of tactics that would then be post-rationalized into a strategy. No. So that's how we can help, is that once someone coming into China is able to listen and understand what's going on, they could then guide it into, let's lift up what you want, how you want to go about it. And we're going to deliver what your expectations are plus. And we're going to invest what's needed. And that's it. You need to work with people in China that understand, that are expert in China. They're not just a bunch of wide boys, as the English would say, talking about, the connections. And I know this guy, name dropping like crazy. Or you don't go to the first guy in China that speaks perfect English. It's like, you need to go to people that really will look at you and say bullshit if you say something that is ridiculous. They'll look you in the eye and say, that's wrong. So you don't go down a path that will lead to the peril, that would lead to disaster for both of you, for all of you. So that's it. It's really basic. Listen, work with pros. And here's the most important thing. Know when it's time to go home. Don't sit around with your expense account and, go and, the pig in the whistle and be the big shot. You're past your sale date. You go home. You say, thank you very much. This has been the greatest experience of my life, and I'll treasure it forever. But I think my time here, my job is done, and I couldn't be more thrilled and proud.
Well, Scott, if our audience wants to get in touch with you or your company, or perhaps even follow you or your company on social media, or follow any content that you put out there, whatever, let our audience know where and how to find you. Twitter @Scott in APAC, which is also my Facebook. Website, which is thecontextcollective.net. 415-613-8510 in beautiful Austin, Texas, with a San Francisco number. I look forward to hearing from anybody. And anybody heading out for South by Southwest this year should definitely use that phone number and find the best watering holes. Oh, you know it. I know where to take you. Scott, thanks very much, buddy. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Take care, man. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Growing a company is hard. Doing it in a foreign market? Exponentially so. The best piece of advice I can give you is not to do it alone. When you start looking across the pond for further expansion possibilities, and I sincerely hope that you do, make sure you choose the right partners to do it with. My good friends at WPIC Marketing and Technologies have almost 20 years of experience helping brands, just like yours, enter China. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Negotiation, and if you're interested in being a guest or want to connect with me or any of our team, please reach out to us at podcast@wpic.co. And be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. 再见。